Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brief primer on imposter syndrome. Let me introduce myself. My name is Jennifer Hunt. I am a pathologist and physician executive. I'm currently the chair of pathology and laboratory medicine at the University of Arkansas for Medical Sciences. I've also held numerous other administrative roles, including the chief of staff and the chair of the medical executive committee and chair of credentials committee. I'm an executive leadership coach, and my coaching practice is centered around working with high-potential physician leaders. I also have specialty expertise in coaching emerging and current women physician leaders. Imposter syndrome was first described in the late 1970s by Dr. Pauline Clance and Suzanne Imes. They originally described it as imposter phenomenon. Since that time, it has gone under a variety of different names, including imposterism, fraud syndrome, imposter tendencies, and imposter experiences. Well, let me tell you, I think imposter syndrome is the wrong name. From a medical point of view, if you have diabetes, you're a diabetic. If you have schizophrenia, you're a schizophrenic. But if you have imposter syndrome, you are not an imposter, even if you think you are one. In fact, there is abundant, valid, scientifically sound external data to support the fact that you are not an imposter. There are a variety of different definitions of imposter syndrome, but my favorite are listed here. It is a constellation of feelings that make someone feel inadequate and insufficient. They feel like a fake or a fraud and live in fear of being discovered. They are unable to internalize or personally acknowledge their own excellence, and they even reject subjective and objective evidence of success and competency. In my coaching practice with women suffering from imposter syndrome, I often ask if anyone else knows that they have imposter syndrome. And they all say, no, of course nobody knows. And that's because all of these feelings are wrapped up in a package of a high-achieving and successful person. So who does experience imposter tendencies? Well, the truth is just about everybody. It can be seen in men, it can be seen in women. It's seen in children, in teens, and adults. Imposter syndrome has been studied in students, in managers, and in working professionals. But we do know that there's a high prevalence of imposter syndrome in high-achieving individuals. Specific groups that have been studied in the literature include women professionals such as physicians, nurses, and lawyers, managers and supervisors, high-performing students at the undergraduate, the graduate, and the medical student level, and faculty who are in academia. And all of these groups have a high prevalence of imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome can show up differently for different people. Here's a list of the most common characteristics and tendencies of those who suffer from imposter syndrome. You are afraid of being discovered as a fake or a fraud. You react strongly to negative criticism, whether it's real or imagined. You blame yourself for any and all struggles or failures. You get stuck in loops of negative thinking and have negative, intrusive thoughts. You focus more on what you haven't done than what you have accomplished. You're convinced that you're not good enough, and you discount your success. You're an overworker to a fault. You avoid showing too much confidence, and you feel a compulsion to be the best and may be described by others as a perfectionist. The fear of failure can paralyze you, but at the same time, you may also dread success. You credit charm or luck for your accomplishments. You have difficulty accepting praise. Take a look at this list. Do any of these resonate with you? Have you experienced any of these thoughts or feelings or tendencies? If so, you might have been experiencing imposter syndrome. Well, I like to define it very simply. Imposter syndrome is essentially when our internal viewpoint does not match the external data or external viewpoints. In other words, our internal self-image is negative, while other people think we're exceptional. And it's self-perpetuating and a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because once we settle in and let these false beliefs take hold, we continuously seek and store evidence to support this false belief, even if it means we have to employ cognitive distortions. So why should you care about imposter syndrome? Well, in the literature, imposter tendencies have been associated with stalled career progression. They've been associated with poor self-esteem, poor self-confidence, and even with physician burnout. Imposter syndrome is also associated with less success, less successful negotiations, less successful relationships with one's boss. You might be wondering why imposter syndrome is important to me. Someone asked me recently, do you suffer from imposter syndrome? And my answer was frankly, yes, every single day. And in fact, I think imposter syndrome significantly contributes to the fact that women are underrepresented in leadership in academic medicine. Don't get me wrong. I still believe that there are truly fewer opportunities for women and that there are blatant examples of gender bias. I also think that there are potentially real differences in the leadership aspirations between some men and some women. And lastly, the mental load is real, and it's a heavy burden that disproportionately affects women over men. But if you take away all of the externally imposed factors I just described, I think we would still be left with fewer women leaders. And that's because of the internal impact of imposter syndrome on aspirations and career progression. So a lot of people ask me this. So what's the cure to imposter syndrome? Well, you already know that I don't think of it as a disease or a syndrome. But what I would like to relate it to is a correctable physical condition, something like poor vision. We all know that there's no magical cure for most people's poor vision, and we fix it by wearing glasses or contact lenses, some kind of correction lens. Well, there's no magical cure for imposter syndrome either, but we can develop our own corrective lenses to improve the way we see ourselves. Just remember, the minute you take off those lenses and stop using them, your vision will become poor again. So if we can't cure it, what can we do? Well, what we can do is we can strive to achieve control over our imposter tendencies. And the start of your journey to find your corrective lens starts with two very simple questions. Is this true? And if it's not true, then what is true instead? And what I mean by is this true is this 100% unequivocally, reliably, and absolutely true? The answer to this question is almost always no. Here's a list of some of the things that the women I coach with imposter syndrome have said that they hear about themselves. The inner voice inside their head is saying, "You sound stupid. You're failing. You're slow. You lack experience. You are not capable. People don't hear you. Nobody likes you. You don't belong." Imagine living with these statements day in and day out on repeat inside of your head. That's imposter syndrome. What are your statements? What are the words inside of your head? What is that inner critic telling you? Start right now. Ask the question, is this true? Is it 100% unequivocally true? And if the answer is no, or even a wavering yes, ask yourself the next question. What's true instead? What's more true? This is a great way to start on your journey to achieving control over imposter syndrome. If you'd like to know more about me or more about imposter syndrome, please visit my website at www.jenniferhuntmd.com. For women physicians, you can also find more information about my group coaching CME program to address imposter syndrome, called Unlocking the Authentic Self, on my website,